Alright, response video to Hythloday, part 1, let's say. It's over here in the corner. What virtue circumvents rights and... Well, it's not even a very good title, so forget it. Anyway, it's on this whole idea of why there is such a thing as animal rights or the value equation in terms of even human rights and how we perceive rights. And again, I've attempted to point out there's two different kinds of rights. There's these absolute kind, this absolute value, this subjective value, and then there's this social contract mush where we, try to be polite and non-offensive and live with each other without imposing on each other. But obviously there's a right and wrong behavior. We can tell people that that's risk behavior, you shouldn't do it. And it just depends on how high the risk is whether we have a right to interfere. And we try not to interfere if it's their own judgment and they're going to blow themselves up. Then we say, well, go ahead, idiot, but you're an idiot. It's like buying lottery tickets. We don't stop people from doing something stupid. Okay, but it's stupid nonetheless. All right. So you in his video, I don't have time to do the whole video, so I'll just do it in pieces. So I've gotten through the first 5.5 minutes. He concedes the argument that consciousnesses have these unpleasant states, but he talks about the value equation as if it's their internal value equation. And the argument isn't that it's some internal process of understanding suffering. No, it's a external fact of the game. So again, it's acknowledging that the property is sentience. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about this thing that we have, a property, sentience, and that this sentience thing creates a property called value. That's a property of being sentient, is that you are in value states. It's not something you think about, it's something that is. Alright, so it's not some kind of, you don't have an internal value equation. You are a pawn on a board. You are a checker on a board with all the other checkers. And the value equation is the math of the disposal of the checkers. What's the most efficient way to get from there's 500 checkers on the board to there's 400 checkers on the board? Which 400 get thrown off would be deciding the value equation, or how should they be thrown off? Should they be thrown in the air first, so they smash really hard on the ground and die horribly, or shall we gracefully inject them and then slide them off the board? That's the value equation. Is, are you going to cause unnecessary harm in the processing of your gameplay? Unnecessary harm, inefficient harm. The point is to achieve peak efficiency in driving the car. That's the point of the value equation. You don't get to sit in the car and just say, I'm going to have a value equation about the ride. I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling. That's not really the point of the value equation, is your internal perception. The point of the value equation is to explain there's 50 people on the bus is going to fall off the road. How do we seat the people to minimize the amount of harm, conscious harm they endure? Should we have a few people that get killed instantly by the crush of the other people, but cushion their impact and therefore cause them less harm? So overall there's only 22 seconds of absolute horrible harm, that kind of thing. That's the value math. That you're not understanding that it's a description of the efficiency of our interaction with sentient beings that have the property, they have the property of value by being sentient. They create value by being sentient. You don't create value by saying, that thing feels. That's not it. You don't get to create value. Value either is or it is not. You either describe it accurately or you describe it inaccurately. That's what we're talking about. So anyway, you go from this concession and then ask this question. How do you jump to the simple, that each animal having value equation. Again, so the animals, they can't do math, okay? Lions can't do math. They can't understand any of these equations. So yes, we don't apply a judgment to them because they can't be expected to understand it. Wherein a human being can be expected to understand risk, can be expected to understand that he doesn't have a right to, say, molest the child because the welfare of the child is valuable as his gratification, and he has just no right to steal something else's welfare for his gratification, blah, 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 blah. And we know animals can't do that math, but if they could do it, then we would apply the same kind of, gee, you shouldn't have done that, judgment. Why you should care about. Okay, so again, you use the word care, and it's really not about caring. It's about conceding. Okay, it's about conceding to the facts. You either concede to the facts or you don't concede to the facts. I'm not telling you to care about horses or pigs or cows or wildebeest or gazelles or even insects. I'm not telling you to care. I'm telling you this is what I say the truth is. They are sentient. They feel. Now, what are you going to do about that? Every day they go through value states, and some of those value states are absolutely horrible. I would pay to avoid being them. There's a whole bunch of stuff today that's going to have experiences that I would pay big money not to have. If somebody came to my door with the experience and said, it's your turn, yeah, I would scramble for all the change I got to say, no, I don't want it to be my turn. I don't want that to happen. And quite obviously, then, I have to logically concede that's a bad thing happening in the world. And I have to write it down in the book as a red number. Ooh, we have some red numbers here. There's red numbers happening every minute the life engine ticks. Every minute we roll this car, there's stuff getting squished under the wheels. And it's creating red stuff. Yeah, that's why it's red, right? Yeah, that's the metaphorical truth of it, that they came up with red because red sort of looks like blood, right? And blood gushing isn't good. Anyway, what obligates me? Another question you ask, and what I'm going to answer you with is logic obligates you. If you concede that the property of consciousness is feeling, sentience, and that the sentience creates unpleasant states, and that the unpleasant states are intrinsically or fundamentally negative and have value, if you're going to concede that then the logic obligates you. Okay? I can't, whether I'm looking in the mirror seeing myself and saying, that guy has value, or I'm looking out the window seeing somebody else, it's the same value. Me, them. Me, them. The same property exists. I have the property of sentience. They have the property of sentience. I can be harmed. They can be harmed. Now, my intelligence can't make a distinction except through bigotry. It can only through some preposterous bigotry say, somehow, my welfare is important, its welfare isn't. So that's what obligates you is logic. You're either, if you concede the premises, if you concede the properties, okay, the properties are in the things. Okay, they're not there for you to decide whether it is or isn't. If you concede it exists and you concede it has the properties, you're obligated to acknowledge the properties. And your properties aren't substantially superior in some fundamental way. You have no reason to believe your properties are significantly different than their property of sentience. So how the hell can you possibly not be obligated by logic to concede the value? So again, it's not about caring. It's about acknowledging. It's about recognizing, not caring. I mean, caring in an intellectual sense, yes, that's what I'm arguing for. I'm arguing for an intellectual recognition. And the fact that once you recognize something else's welfare is the same as your own, and then you might have this capacity to feel their pain in the sense that you could imagine yourself being subjected to the same circumstances and say, I wouldn't want that to happen, then again it just seems logical that you would concede that it happening to them is no better than it happening to you. You can't find any logical reason to think it's better that they have it than you. not logically. Anyway. Alright, the property of value is in it, not in your judgment of it. So again, the fact that there was sentience on Earth long before human beings started speaking of a language is just a truth. The fact that there was blood on the board, that it meant something, that value was being exchanged, created on Earth, created, living things going through experiences, value creation. And I'm arguing decidedly a flood of red numbers, and not really anything rationally that could be determined to be rationally a true positive to compensate for any of it. Okay, so again, your obligation, isn't to care. Your obligation is to respect the facts. The fact is, it's a checkerboard. The fact is, all the checkers are fundamentally equal, and it just goddamn doesn't matter who is suffering. The fact is that something with the property of sentience is suffering. That's all that matters. You manifest the property capable of suffering. They manifest the property capable of suffering. That equal sign is fundamental. It doesn't matter whether one guy has a lot of hair, one guy loses his hair. It just doesn't matter. All the subtle little details, all the little subtle distinctions between you and me are irrelevant to the fact that conscious states exist, that we manifest them, and it just doesn't matter who's manifesting the suffering. Alright, wrong is, it is matter are right and wrong. It's wrong to say that it matters, he's just again arguing that somehow there's no right or wrong built into this fundamental math. And what I'm saying is, yes, there is. The logic just dictates it. Once you identify the things with the red number, and you've identified, like I said, I don't think you can identify things with true black numbers, you're stuck. You could have green numbers even. Let's say black numbers are just things that eliminate red numbers. You know what I'm saying? I mean, preventing harm is good, but it prevents harm. It uses up its goodness in the thing that it accomplished. It doesn't have any value to fix the other harm that still isn't prevented. So, your gratification doesn't undo somebody else's suffering. There's just no undo equation here. It just doesn't work. I myself. So again, I guess my point here was, who cares? Yourself. You even pointed out that you have your own personal reasons. My own reasons for respecting animals. My own reasons. See, that statement in itself is kind of flawed, isn't it? I mean, reason. Reason. It's not your own reason. If I have a reason, it's a reason. It's the reason. It's logical. It's not something I personally possess. It's something that is completely exchangeable. So it'd be stupid for somebody to have my own reason. Either logic applies in the whole universe or it applies nowhere. There's no point in saying logic only applies inside of me. My reasons are my special super reasons, and your reasons are some other kind of reasons. There's either logic or there isn't logic. You're either applying logic or you're not applying logic. And if you're not applying logic, you're not applying reason. Anyway. Describing reality, not yourself. Okay, we were right there. So empathy, you brought up empathy, and again, it's another tricky word. I'm not opposed to the word empathy, but it's caught up in so much emotional baggage. So much of this cuteness idea, bigotries, prejudices, our ego stuff that looks like us. Where it's more directly, we can feel the pain because it's more like, oh yeah, I can see how I could fall into that circumstance, so it's more personal, it's more, our extended, I care about somebody kind of thing, and so I have empathy. I have to care about them first before I can manifest the empathy. So again, it's an emotional word, and I'm just saying I don't need the word to make my argument. You don't need to have empathy all right, to recognize the circumstance, to recognize there's a victim, and I'm not allowed to kill the victim. I'm not allowed to harm the victim. I'm not allowed to abuse the victim. I don't have to like them. I don't have to think they're cute. I don't have to have any connection to it whatsoever to acknowledge my responsibility not to cause it harm. All right. All right, yeah, so bigotry, blah, blah, blah. The properties of sentience. So I have that, that's what's being described here, okay? We're describing reality, not describing what you feel, not describing how you think or all that kind of crap. We're describing a real circumstance. We're saying, okay, we're conceding. This is the gasoline that goes in the engine. And this is what the engine supposedly is producing, and I can argue that there is nothing being produced, the wheels are just spinning, but let's just say we have spinning wheels, and there's a certain logic to reducing how much gasoline you have to put into this thing to make it do whatever it's doing. So regardless of what it's doing, and whether what it's doing is valuable or not, the simple argument is you want to use as little gasoline as possible. Expend and waste as little suffering as possible. There's nothing else. Alright, so far stretch is how you described it. You think it's a far stretch for me to describe property, the property of feeling, sentience, the property of negative conscious states, and to simply look at the ocean or look at any other thing, any other events happening in the world and saying, that's a bad thing, that's a bad thing, that's a bad thing. Red number, red number, red number, red number. So what we're arguing here about is not the red numbers, apparently. We're arguing about the black numbers. You're saying that the fact that elephants are, pointlessly satisfying their hungers that are driving them, whipping them essentially, to keep marching on and doing things that they have no control over. They don't choose to reproduce, that somehow that magnificent death march that all animals are on is somehow so fantastic and great that it's worth all of their suffering. So that's the thing. You're basically acknowledging their suffering. You're saying, I can't do much about it because it's the way nature is. And then on top of that, you're saying, and I think the whole little pageant is beautiful. The parade is marvelous. Even, you're not going to make a rational argument explaining to me how the elephant's desire is more important than the non-existent Martian's desire or the non-existent Venetian desire. How come that the non-existent Venetian desire isn't a tragedy and the non-existence of the elephant's desire would be a tragedy? And what I'm saying is, if you don't make the elephant, you don't got to put the blood into it. You don't have to put the potential for the red numbers to spill all over the fucking road into the organism. You don't have to consume any gasoline. There's no need to pour gasoline in it. There's no need to turn the key. And you can save yourself all that red number production by simply not turning the key. Simple math. Okay? And but you think some part of this is sacrosanct. You think some part of this life, bubbly, bubbly, happy rainbow bullshit actually has a function or a mission that's so valuable, so precious, so needful, so blah, 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 that somehow compensates for this huge waste of gasoline that you're conceding exists and conceding is negative. And I'm saying, yes, show me, prove it, demonstrate it, logically explain it, because I don't think you can. So anyway, yeah, that's enough. Part 1. Future, later, I gotta go to work, blah, blah, blah.